very often you have a westernized young Muslim person going to a sheikh from quote unquote back home, a traditional Muslim country, and asking the sheikh, oh, I think I'm gay, or what does that mean? Or can I? And the sheikh just says, oh, it's haram. And the child, the youth is asking about an identity, is asking about feelings, is asking about a political orientation, is asking about many different things. And the scholar is just understanding, oh, he's asking about sodomy, can he have anal sex? Like, oh, in the Sharia, that's haram, end of story. And there's kind of a complete miscommunication because they're coming from two completely different, what are now completely different paradigms of looking at, again, sex, sexuality, gender interactions, morality, what human beings are and what it means to be a human. So we're going to dig deep and get into all of this. Before starting, I just want to tell people this is going to be a lengthy presentation. There's also a lot of detail. There are a lot of slides, and the slides have a lot of information. It is necessary, I think, given our circumstances, to take the time to go through and to really understand these issues very deeply and precisely with the proper conceptual vocabulary and the proper terminology. And that is why Paul and I have decided to give it its due and to really take the time that's necessary. In addition, I have asked Paul to post the slide deck to connect it to the presentation so that it will be publicly available. Anyone can, download it as a PDF to use it, to review it, to use it in your own teaching or halaqas or study circles or whatever. I think it's just important that the knowledge get out and that people have access to it.
Yeah, so, I think it's going to be an outstanding resource for the coming months and years for people to come back to. It's going to be detailed, thorough. The presentation, the slides are very professionally produced, obviously from an expert perspective. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity to set the record straight. No pun intended.
Right. Okay. All right. So without further ado, so the title of the talk, as Paul mentioned, is Islam and LGBTQ, Gender, Sexuality, Morality, and Identity. LGBTQ is enclosed in parentheses here, or square quote, in quotation marks, because I will be problematizing the term itself and the conceptual baggage that underlies it. And again, that's very important to the work that we need to do. So if anyone wonders why that's in quotation marks, that is the reason why. I'd also like to say that this talk today is a kind of expanded version of a talk I gave about 1.5 years ago online to a community in Houston, Texas. That talk is, if you go on YouTube, you will see it, and it has the title Gender, Sexuality, Morality, and Identity in Islam. And it's based on the same slide deck, except this deck is somewhat expanded. And so this would be, presumably the go-to lecture, once it's out. Yeah. If you come across both of those, this would be the more updated and the more expanded version. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Good.
Great. So the contents, we're going to first start by setting the stage. Now is June, the month of June, which has been identified or billed as Pride Month in many countries in the West and also other parts of the world. So we want to just look, how where we are today in the year 1443/2022, and then how did we get here? And then, as Paul mentioned, the importance of our conceptual framework. This is absolutely critical. Because as I already mentioned, the language that we use and the conceptual framework that we bring to bear on an issue are absolutely critical in terms of how we conceptualize and therefore judge that issue. And again, so many changes have taken place deep beneath the surface of our conscious understanding that we have to do a lot of digging and also expend a lot of effort in order to understand how we are really dealing with two very different conceptual paradigms now when we talk about Islam and an Islamic worldview in general, and on sexuality and gender in particular, and the kind of modern, Western, secular, modern/postmodern now worldview on the other hand. These are two very different kind of approaches, ways of looking at the world, ways of construing reality that depart from very, very different and often kind of diametrically opposed assumptions. And I think the more we realize that, the easier it will be for us in our own hearts and minds to kind of navigate some of these differences of opinion and clashes, frankly, which arise and will presumably continue to do so on this issue and others. And so after we talk about that, we will get into the Islamic paradigm on gender, sex, and sexual morality in general. And then we will go into homosexuality and transgenderism in particular. And we will do that from two angles. We will look at the kind of moral Shari'i considerations, so kind of what Islam teaches, what the Sharia says about particular actions. That's kind of from a sort of objective perspective, if we can say, the way things are in and of themselves regarding the moral valuation of particular acts. And then we will also look at it from the kind of subjective perspective. What about Muslims who find themselves dealing with same-sex attractions or gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder? How can we understand this phenomenon? How can Muslims in those shoes deal with this in an Islamic way, while staying true to the teachings and the message of Islam? And how can we as a Muslim community support Muslims who are struggling with these types of issues, which are very real issues and can be very difficult and deep issues? How can we best serve and help our brothers and sisters in their struggle to live their lives in accordance with the will of Allah, as all Muslims are called to do? And then we will move on to a summary and conclusion, and then I will go over some resources. MashaAllah, our community has really produced some great resources over the last just half decade, 4 or 5 years, 5, 6 years, just a handful of individuals, and we'll see them by the end of this. And so I'd like to walk you through some of the resources so that you know where to go after this talk is over, and you want to continue your education on this topic and your engagement with it.